Louie T. Welcome to the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2020 NFL Draft using our brand new grading scale. Picks will be graded from 5 to 1, 1 being the highest score a pick can receive, 1 being the lowest score a pick can receive. We will then tally up all of the scores individually, get an aggregate score, divide by the number of picks, which will then yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Colts next, Indy next, IND. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in the series is none other than the Indianapolis Colts. And very quickly, very vastly, my two favorite GMs in this league are becoming Chris Ballard in Indianapolis and Brandon Beane in Buffalo. Those two just seem to get it. And before long, they're going to have their teams in a position to win big in this league. I firmly believe that. I think both of those teams are trending in the right direction. And when you look at where those franchises are now and where they were before, it's not a coincidence that since those guys have taken over in those respective spots, you've seen these organizations start to take off in the right direction. So Indy to me is in great hands with Chris Ballard. And it's, again, it's very ironic that these two franchises both traded away their first round picks in order to get guys that can help them win now. In Buffalo's case, they traded with Minnesota to get their hands on Stephon Diggs, surrendered their first round pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. And the Colts surrendered their first round pick, number 13 overall, to the San Francisco 49ers in exchange for DeForest Buckner. So you get an impact defender right away, comes in and helps boost and bolster what is already a solid unit, but really needs some guys to take them over the top. That's one of those guys that takes you over the top immediately. And now you just add to the nucleus that you're building in Indy. Not quite sure you have the quarterback, the trigger man yet, that's going to help you get to where you ultimately want to be. Had you had Andrew Luck, you'd be in a much different space right now, but you know, can't cry over spilt milk. You drafted a young quarterback that I'm excited of where he is in terms of where he landed. We'll talk about him in this draft, and we'll talk about all of the surrounding pieces that you're starting to build. And I really like this draft, and I say that I seem like every year. I had my questions and my doubts last year, but remember I said, if it's one person that I will follow and trust blindly, it's Chris Ballard. And he proved me wrong and right at the same time, because again, I was willing to go along with what he did last year, even though I didn't necessarily agree with all of the selections. Why? Because I believe so much in Chris Ballard. Let's take a look at what he did, a 9-player draft in 2020. Let's see how he added to this roster that already is a really solid roster in this league. Now they're looking to take that next step. And I think this is a draft that's absolutely going to help them do that. Let's take a look. Really, this entire offseason is a major offseason that's going to be a huge step in the Colts foundation moving forward. Let's take a look at what the Colts did in the 2020 NFL Draft, shall we? I've got my write-ups for each and every single one of these players right here in front of me. I'm going to be reading from them. And we start in the second round with this Colts draft. 34th pick overall. A wide receiver out of USC, Michael Pittman Jr. is the selection. This is the pick they received from the Redskins last year. Remember, the Redskins traded back up into the first round. The Colts allowed them to come back up, take Montez Sweat. And so this was the compensation for that selection. And good thing, and I think that kind of helped the Colts be okay with trading away their first round pick, is the fact that they had what amounted to essentially a back end of the first round, you know, bleeding into the second round pick. This 34th pick overall, the second pick overall in the second round, felt like a first round pick to them probably. And so they were a little bit more at ease parting with their first rounder, knowing that they had this one sitting there for them at the top of the second round. And they filled a need, you know, and before I even get to the Michael Pittman Jr. selection, I laugh at the people that talk about this selection as if, the Indianapolis Colts went out and got a big receiver because Phillip Rivers is more comfortable throwing to big receivers. Like, I laugh and I scoff at that notion because this is a Colts team that has been chasing after big receivers for the last 3-4 years now. They've been looking to find a big complimentary wide receiver to T.Y. Hilton for years, and they just haven't been able to find that guy. I mean, if you go back 2, 3, 4 years ago, this is a team that went out and drafted Deion Kane out of Clemson. Did not work in the later rounds. Drafted Daurice Fountain. He's still a guy that I never liked. Daurice Fountain. I never liked that pick. All right, out of northern, Iowa, I believe. Never liked that pick whatsoever, but he's still fighting for a roster spot in Indy. Then you go last year, and you saw what they did in free agency, going out and getting Devin Funchess, another big body wide receiver, 1-year prove-it deal. It didn't work. He got injured. And so now here they are yet again looking for a big target to throw the football to. And it was more of a necessity this year than in past years because now there's no more Eric Ebron at the tight end position. So you lose a red zone threat. You lose a guy with a little bit of size. You had to go out and get a guy that gives you a bigger target here. And I love the fact that they doubled down on that position, not just getting one, but going out and getting another one later on in the draft and saying, look, we're going to throw 2 big darts at the wide receiver board, and we hope at least one of them sticks. Hopefully both of them does. But Michael Pittman Jr., 6'4", 223 pounds, ran a 4.52 40, which I thought really cemented himself as one of the top receivers in this draft after running such a good 40 at the combine. 101 catches for 1,275 yards and 11 scores in 2019 in just 13 games. So that's some big time numbers there. For his career, 171 grabs for 2,519 yards, 19 scores in 48 games. I had a day 2 mid to late second round pick on him, grade on him. And I didn't mind where he was taken in this draft because he was starting to rise up the draft board, but more importantly, because of the team that selected him. This is one of those picks where I elevated the score because of the place where he landed, because of the fit and the need, all kind of marrying up and meeting one another. It just makes a ton of sense here. I had him as my 13th rated wide receiver in what was a extremely deep wide receiver class. He ended up being the 8th receiver taken. So I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on. Let's get to his strengths. Size, absolutely 6'4", 223 pounds. He's a height, weight, speed specimen, the kind of guy that you're looking for, exactly the kind of guy you're looking for in Indianapolis. Hands, he's got some of the better hands at the receiver position, really in this draft, irregardless of position. He's got some really soft, drugstore cotton type hands that engulf the football. Not many drops on tape from this guy. Usually if the football's in his general vicinity, he's going to come down with it. There are some instances where I'd like to see him be tougher, stronger, go after the football, attack it, and come down with it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But in any event, his hands are A1. Feel confident about Michael Pittman Jr. and his hands in just about any situation. Speed! 4.5, 240 for a guy running that kind of size at 6'4", 223. That 4.52 sounds like beautiful music to these ears. He can run. And it's funny because you look at him, you look at his frame, and you say, okay, he's probably not going to run by me. And then you get on the field, you underestimate him, and he runs by you. And numerous, countless times watching him on tape, he's behind the secondary, and you wonder to yourself, how did you allow this to happen? But he's got that sneaky speed that if you look at his frame and you think to yourself, he can't outrun me, he will outrun you. Solid route runner. I think that's something that I really like about him. Probably one of my more one of his more endearing traits in terms of the things that I saw from him is his route running ability. This is a guy that I think really takes pride in running routes, getting open, uncovering. He does a really good job. And at USC, he was one of the go-to wide receivers, and they had a bevy of quarterbacks last season. They went through about 3 or 4 different quarterbacks, and he was the guy that they could count on. They had a great wide receiving core, a nice little trio there, but he was the guy that stood out as the one that could separate at all three levels, underneath, intermediate, and even get deep behind the defense. And in some 50-50 situations, throw it up and he would go make a play for you. Catch it in traffic. He's one of these guys. Again, I love the hands, love the size and the frame that you're throwing the football to. And even if he doesn't get open, even if he doesn't uncover, you can force it to him numerous times. 3rd and 6. They want to get the football to Michael Pittman because they know it doesn't really matter. He's going to come down with the football. So he's the guy that you're looking for in a tough spot where you know you got to have it. Throw it in traffic. It doesn't matter. Backer there, safety there, corner there. It doesn't matter. Michael Pittman Jr. can come down with the football. Run after the catch. Now, he's not much of a make-you-miss guy as much as he is just a physical guy with the football in his hands. But he's not one of these guys that's running to contact. He's going to try to get away from you. And if you come up sloppily, he will make you miss. But that's not really what he does best. He's more of a physical run after the catch guy, and he should be at 6'4", 223 pounds. Big play ability. I talked about the number of catches in the yards, but it's the ability to go down the field and make big plays, chunk plays. This is a guy that when you watch him on tape, you're seeing a steady diet of 27, 34, 55, these kind of big chunk plays that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see from a 6'4", 223-pound receiver on a consistent basis. But yet, he's going down the field. He's stretching the field vertically. He's getting one-on-one situations. He's winning those situations. You watch him against Utah. He climbs the ladder, goes and gets the football, and then that's where that run after catch comes into play. He's got a guy chasing him down. He stiff arms him and carries that guy into the end zone for about a 62-yard touchdown. And on a 50-50 ball that he goes up, catches in double coverage, comes down with it, and then outruns a guy, stiff arms him, gets into the end zone. So you see kind of all of those traits that I've been mentioning on one play, where his size, his speed, his hands, his catch in traffic, his run after the catch, and his big play ability kind of all come in to focus on one play. So you see what this guy kind of brings to the table. Speaking of making big plays, catch radius. This is a guy with an outstanding catch radius, obviously at 6'4", with longer arms. He can go up, high point the football. I just talked about a situation where he high pointed it versus Utah. There are other instances of him doing that on tape. He's a guy that can go down low and scoop the football out of the turf. And he's a guy that can make the quarterback right. They make a mistake, maybe a little errant throw. He can go outside of his frame and go and get the football. Production was through the roof this past year, by far and away his biggest year of his career. I mean, when you look at his numbers, only 70 catches the other years while at SC, but last season, 101 catches for over 1,275 yards and 11 scores. So, I mean, he pretty much doubled all of his numbers in just one season, and what it took him to build in 3 years. He surpassed all of it essentially in 1 year. So he's trending in the right direction production-wise. And, of course, NFL bloodlines. His father played in the league for a good spell with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, won a Super Bowl ring with them, Michael Pittman. And so he's got that coursing through his veins. And you know, his father is showing him the ropes, probably explaining to him how the NFL game goes. And so this guy isn't going to be wide-eyed and in awe of the NFL game. He's probably grown up in it his entire life. And so this is a guy that I feel like is a professional, ready to go right out of the packaging. And that's why this is a really good pick for the Indianapolis Colts. You get to his weaknesses. I feel like he can be stronger at the point of catch. All right. And when I say that, I'm not really talking about underneath per se. More down the field, I'd like to see him be a little bit stronger at the point of catch in those 50-50 ball situations when it's not as clean. The one against Utah was a pretty clean attempt. The safety kind of overran it. The corner wasn't there in time. And so he really had a free run to go up, climb the ladder, go and get it, and was unmolested in doing so. I want him to be able to pluck the football out of the air with a small 5'11" gnat of a corner draped all over him and him still come down with it. Those are the ones I want to see him go and make plays on. Those are the ones he's missing right now. Those are the ones he's not coming down with at this current moment. I'd like to see him be a little bit stronger at the point of catch. Needs to be a bit more subtle in creating space. He's pushing off right now. And, you know, big receivers have to do that sometimes. Guys get a little handsy with them because there's a lot to grab, and the officials kind of let them get away with that sometimes. A little tug of the hip, a little tug of the jersey here or there just to keep them right there in the hip pocket of these bigger receivers. And as a big guy, you got to sometimes give him a little shoulder, give him a little, it's got to be subtle though. Jason Witten for years, and I always use him as a prime example because Witten didn't have the greatest athleticism throughout his career, but he knew how to get open because of the subtle nuances at the stem of the route. Little lean on that corner to break him off, little elbow, little shoulder, all right, and then a little nudge. Not much, don't extend. They'll let you get away with some stuff, but when they see that full extension, they're going to throw the flag every time. He's got a problem with the full extension. Just a little shoulder, a little elbow is enough to give you the space you need to make the play. I'd like to see him be a little subtle. I'm not telling him to stop. I'm telling him to be a little bit more subtle with the push-off. Can he consistently win at the NFL level is a question that a lot of people are asking. Can this guy consistently get open? Not necessarily on the 50-50 balls down the field. Not on the back shoulder throws, because that's where his frame comes into play. We're talking about, can he win on the slant when you've got an aggressive corner breathing down your throat? All right. Can he win off the line of scrimmage and win that 12 back to 10 when we got to have it on 3rd and 8? Can he win in those underneath to intermediate situations? Not quite sure if he can separate as a true winner. He doesn't necessarily have to be a number one at the next level, at least not right now. I think T.Y. Hilton, when healthy, still has the skills to be a true number one. You've got Parrish Campbell that you drafted last year, so we'll see where he fits into the totem pole. Will he assume the role of number 2 wide receiver and leapfrog a guy like Parrish Campbell, or will Parrish Campbell have a better year, not be injury prone, and actually give you what you thought you might have gotten from him in his rookie campaign? And T.Y. stay healthy, and they prove to be a dominant speed tandem as a 1-2 punch. And then you have a guy like Michael Pittman offering you a complementary third piece there. We'll see what he ends up developing into at the next level. But can he stretch defenses vertically is the last weakness, or rather more of a question than a weakness. He did it at the collegiate level in the Pac-12. It's one thing to do it against Utah and Oregon and, teams like that, Washington and those kinds of teams, in Oregon State. It's another thing to do it against NFL level competition. It's another thing to do it against the big boys in this league. Fortunate for him, there aren't really many elite corners in the AFC South. So from that standpoint, you had Jalen Ramsey in the division. He's gone now. There's really not one standout corner that makes you afraid in that division. So I think he might be able to get behind NFL defenses. We'll see. But nonetheless, this is a great pick. I love the selection. Phillip Rivers has always had great chemistry with bigger receivers, going all the way back to Vincent Jackson in his heyday in San Diego with the Chargers, all the way to Michael Williams now with the Los Angeles Chargers. Now he's getting a big target that he can just throw the football up to and have him go and get it in Michael Pittman Jr. My player comp for Pittman Jr. is Kenny Britt. If you remember, Kenny Britt out of Rutgers, played a ton of years in the NFL, all over the place, actually. Tennessee was probably some of his more productive seasons. You had the Giants in there, the Browns. Kenny Britt, when he was mentally engaged and focused, was a really productive NFL wide receiver. The problem was he wouldn't stay focused enough. I don't think you're going to have that problem with Michael Pittman Jr., but the skill set is very similar. Size, ability to run, go get the football, all of those things are there with Michael Pittman Jr. And in the second round, 34th pick, overall, wide receiver out of USC, Michael Pittman Jr. for me is a 5. I love this selection. Love the fit. And I love the need that was there, that was taken care of. I felt like this was the draft. If you needed a receiver, to get one and get them nice and early. I know there's this inclination to wait. Oh, well, it's a deep draft. We'll get one later. No, get you some elite stuff, man. And there was so many good receivers. I know 13th rated wide receiver for me in my rankings of the receivers. Sounds like I wasn't high on him. Au contraire, my friend. Very high on Michael Pittman Jr. And this draft was so deep at receiver that you went about 15 to 17 strong before you started to see a real drop-off in my estimation. So he was still in a sweet spot in this draft in terms of talent, man. And you got yourself a really good one there at a big-time position of need. As we move on to the next draft pick, still in the second round. Colts had 2 second rounders. This one 41st overall, a running back out of Wisconsin. Jonathan Taylor is the selection. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I didn't think the Colts needed a running back. I told you I really liked Jordan Wilkins out of Ole Miss. You know how I feel about your lead back. His name escapes me. It'll come back to me. But I felt like he was a big-time back for you, and I thought he did some really good things. And so I really wasn't sure that you really needed to spend and invest such a high-level pick on the running back position, but it just goes to show you what the Colts think of the running back position, what they feel that position is going to mean for them moving forward, and how they really want to go about running their offense. They're going to run this offense through what they've built up front along the offensive line, one of the more dominant groups in all of football, and they're going to build it through the run game. And now that you've got, a few backs that you really like, and you add Jonathan Taylor to the mix. He was my number 1 rated back in this draft class, by the way. I know that goes against the grain of a lot of people's thought process regarding the running back position. Most people had DeAndre Swift number 1, and maybe even Taylor behind, some other guys in this draft like Edwards-Helaire or someone like that. I had Jonathan Taylor as my number 1 rated back. I thought this guy was dynamic. A lot of people, he didn't have to create runs. There were big gaping holes for him at Wisconsin. I saw him make some things happen. 5'10", 226, 4.39 40 was what did it for me. I did not think he was that fast. I used to question his speed because he played in the Big Ten. I always do that. I always err on the side of caution with Big Ten players because they play in the Big Ten, and there aren't a ton of tremendous athletes out there. So I felt like, he's running by Minnesota. He's running by Iowa. There he goes again, running by Michigan State. Whoop-de-doo, okay? He did it to Illinois. Great for him, all right? Then when he ran at the combine, I said, okay. I apologize. Mistakes were made. And so 300, now this is one of the biggest knocks on him. Man, that odometer's up there, man. You're buying this as a pre-owned vehicle here, and you feel good about the purchase, but, you really want to buy that pre-owned vehicle with about 30,000 miles on it or less. You're getting this one with about a good 55 to 60K on it, all right? Now, that's why you got these other guys in the backfield so that you're hoping he doesn't have to do all of the heavy lifting by himself. But 320 rushes for 2,003 yards and 21 scores in 2019 to go along with 26 catches, 252 yards, and 5 scores in 14 games. For his career, a whopping 926 carries. Woo! That's an average of up over 308 carries a game, okay? All right. A season. All right. 308 carries a season, essentially is what that amounts to, for 6,174 yards and 50 scores to go along with 42 catches, 407 yards, and 5 scores. So that was in 41 games. Again, as I mentioned, I had a first-round grade on Jonathan Taylor. I thought he was going to be the only running back taken in the first round. I initially had him going to the Tennessee Titans. They went in a different direction. They ended up going with an offensive lineman. The only back taken in the first round, coincidentally enough, with Edwards-Helaire to the Chiefs. And so I thought you got a steal. And frankly, the fact that he was the third back taken off the board, I felt like was a gift. And I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on. And I know some people are going to say you're crazy for the comp you're giving, but I feel confident about the comp I'm going to give you. Strengths, size. And we can just couple up these things. Size and speed and physicality, to me, all go hand in hand with Jonathan Taylor. I told you I dismissed the speed. First of all, he's got quality NFL running back size. That's right around the sweet spot. Usually people don't want big, tall backs. I like my tall backs. I like my upright runners, as I like to call them. But 5'10" is right around the sweet spot for a running back. You don't want them too big. You want their shoulder pads and their pad level to be low. You want them to have a low center of gravity. 5'10" is right where you're looking for. 226, great size, close to 230, not too heavy, just right. The physicality and the speed are ridiculous. The 4.39 blew me away. And everyone told me he was going to run fast. Everyone said he's going to have a Saquon Barkley-like combine. And I dismissed them because I thought Saquon Barkley was a ridiculous athlete that it'd be hard for someone to come close to him. And then Jonathan Taylor did exactly what they said he was going to do. And his physicality should not be dismissed because he had some holes at Wisconsin. Don't dismiss the fact that this guy is a physical runner. He can make you miss too. And I think that's the beauty and part of the reason why I was so fascinated with Jonathan Taylor and made him my number one back on the board is because of the combination of speed, the blend of the physicality, but then still the finesse to make you miss. He's not too big. He's not overly, burly to the fact or to the point where he can't move. He still has agility and sweet enough feet to make you miss at the second level and take it the distance and then turn up that acceleration, which I'll go ahead and throw that in there because that's another strength, and turn up that acceleration and go much faster than slow and off to the races. He goes to the end zone. So his ability to make you miss out in space, I was more taken aback by his ability to make you miss than anything else because I had been seeing him run by guys in the Big Ten for years. So that wasn't news to me. The 4.39 was news, but him running past guys on film, that's what I expected. That's what I had seen from day one from him. The physicality, he's a big guy. Yeah, damn near 230. So, that wasn't a surprise. It was the ability to make guys miss out in space that I was shocked by because I wasn't expecting that from him. Yards after contact, again, he's one of those guys, runs through arm tackles and those arm contact attempts. He's one of those guys that's able to run through shoulder tackles. If you don't wrap up, he's one of those guys that'll stiff arm you and continue on with his progress up the field. He's one of those guys that's got that forward lean. So when you hit him, if he's 1 yard short of the first down, he's going to fall forward and get that first down. He's the guy you want to hand it to in, 3rd and 1, 4th and inches type of situations. He's going to get you that yard or inches and then some a lot of times. There's so much to like here with Jonathan Taylor. He's got a nose for the goal line. Talked about the 21 touchdowns rushing at 26 overall as he had 5 receiving. And that's something that I thought he actually got better at. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but got a nose for the goal line. He finds the end zone, and the touchdown numbers kind of speak for themselves. And then you have his production, which was just through the roof throughout his entire career at Wisconsin. They knew what they had in Jonathan Taylor, and they rode his back from day one on the campus in Madison. As soon as he arrived, they knew they had a bell cow, and they fed their bell cow almost to the point where he was regurgitating carries at the end of his career. But nonetheless, this is a guy that has tremendous production. And if you need a back to carry it 25, 27, 30 times in a game, that doesn't have to be Marlon Mack anymore. It can now be Jonathan Taylor. I told you I'd remember his name at some point. And so I love the 1-2 punch you got now. You arguably have the best 1-2 punch in the entire league. And behind that offensive line, it doesn't really get much better than that. The Cowboys have a sweet setup in Dallas with their offensive line and Ezekiel Elliott, but I'd put your setup with that offensive line and these 2 backs against their 2 backs. I think you've got a better setup in terms of that right now. But you go to his weaknesses. Is he a 3-down back? I think that's the thing that a lot of people look at him and say, not really sure we want him on the field on 3rd down and 7. And that's the real question is, can I trust you not just as a pass catcher? I actually felt like as the years progressed, he got better. And you watch him in 2019, he looks a lot more comfortable catching a football than he did in 2017 or 2018. He worked really tirelessly at that. You can tell he put in the work to get better as a pass catcher, and it showed. I mean, he had 5 career receiving touchdowns, all of them coming in 2019. He had 26 receptions in 2019. He only had 42 for his career, so he more than doubled his output for his entire career in 2019 as a receiver. All of his receiving touchdowns in 2019. So I felt like he took that step. And when I watched him at the combine, I saw a guy that was a lot more comfortable catching the football than a lot of people would have led you to believe. However, where I question him is pass pro. I don't see a guy right now that is as comfortable in pass pro as you would need him to be to protect the guy that's a sitting duck like a Phillip Rivers in year one. I'm not sure if I would be comfortable enough sticking Jonathan Taylor in the backfield on 3rd and 7 without him going out on a route. If he's got to stay in to protect, and you never know, when you stick a back out there, he's got to be able to do everything. All right, he's got to be able to see that they're coming with a full blitz and Phillip Rivers checks to him staying in. He's got to be able to pick that guy up, scan the field, find out where the MDM is, most dangerous man, and then go stick his nose in there and give Phillip Rivers the time he needs to deliver the football. I'm not sure he can do that right now. I'm less worried about the pass receptions and his ability to catch it, and I'm more concerned about him as a pass pro guy right now. Fumbles. This is a big one. This is a big one here. This guy had 18 career fumbles, lost 15 of them. That is a robust number if I've ever heard one. And nobody was really talking about this throughout the entire process, but that's a ton of numbers, man. That's a ton of fumbles. He had 8 in 2017. Lost 6 of them. He had 4 in 2018, lost all 4 of those. And then he had 6 more in 2019. So it's not a problem that waned over the years, that he started out with an issue of ball security and then it got better over time. He's still coughing it up at just about the same level that he was as a freshman, and he lost 5 of the 6 that he fumbled. So these aren't fumbles out of bounds. These aren't little fumbles that he gets back on. His team is losing possession of the football more times than not. That is something that will get you on the bench faster than anything else. He's going to have to take care of the rock. And I get it. He toted the rock a ton. And the more you touch it, the more there is an opportunity for something bad to happen. I don't care. You can't fumble 18 times in 3 years. That is just too many fumbles. And I think that's another reason people might have pushed him down their board. And I understand it. I totally get it. And then finally, his vision. Now, I do question his vision at times. Can he create on his own? Massive holes at Wisconsin. That's everybody else's narrative, not mine. But sometimes I see opportunities, and I'm like, yeah, he could have done it. I'm not one to really question a running back's vision. That's so easy to do when you're sitting back in your chair and you get the whole view of the field. Remember, if you've ever worn a helmet before, you don't have a ton of peripheral vision. It's an innate thing. It's a feel thing that a back has to have. I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor doesn't have it, but there were a couple of times where I felt like, he could have did something a little bit different there than what he did. But at the end of the day, I don't question him. The guy ran for over 6,000 yards in his career, rushed for over 2,000 yards twice in his career, never missed a game. So the durability is ridiculously off the charts. That's another strength. 12 200-yard plus efforts in his career. 3 games over 250 plus yards. So this is a guy that was a workhorse at Wisconsin. And this is a guy that, if I'm the Indianapolis Colts, I feel like I've got a dynamic backfield right now between Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor behind that line. How can you not love this selection? I thought that this was a position that you didn't necessarily need to attack this aggressively, but if you were going to, this is the kind of back that you go out and get in the 2nd round, 41st pick overall, running back out of Wisconsin. Jonathan Taylor, for me, is obviously a 5. I love this selection, love the player, as you can tell. I think the Colts got an absolute steal. Thought this guy had first-round talent. My comp for him is Adrian Peterson, the future Hall of Fame back of the Minnesota Vikings, currently with the Washington Redskins. I see a lot of the same traits. Obviously, Adrian's a bigger guy at 6'2". You're talking about a 5'10" back here, but that's essentially the last of the differences between the two. Adrian was a 4'3" guy. Jonathan Taylor's a 4'3" guy. Adrian was a 225-pound running back, 230 somewhere in there. Jonathan Taylor's right there. Jonathan Taylor runs with physicality and downhill. Adrian Peterson had a fumbling issue in his career. So does Jonathan Taylor to this point. So these are all things that I look at, and I just see, and Adrian Peterson was a guy that the Vikings were not comfortable having on the field on 3rd downs a lot of times. They would take him off the field. Mewelde Moore and a bunch of other backs would be on the field on 3rd downs, and that may be something you have to do with Adrian Peterson, or Jonathan Taylor moving forward. We go to the next pick in this draft, 3rd round for the Indianapolis Colts, 85th overall selection. Defensive back out of Utah, Julian Blackmon is the selection. 6 feet, 204-pound safety out of Utah. Because he tore his ACL at the end of his senior season, and what a shame. I hate when guys get that close to the finish line, can see the light at the end of the tunnel. They can actually see the yellow tape, the red tape at the very end of the race, and they get hurt right at the end. That's a really a tough thing, a bitter pill to swallow. It's a gut punch is what it is, and I hate that for guys. And so no 40 time on him, but when you watch him on tape, I've got him anywhere from 4.43 to 4.49. Like, he can run. He's a 4.4 guy. All right, he's not a 4.5 guy. He's a 4.4 guy. So you're talking about an X corner converted over to safety. The guy can run. So he's somewhere in that 4.4 range. His season stats: 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 4 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, 1 pick six in 13 games before the injury cut the rest of his season short. 8.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sack, 2 forced fumbles, 20 pass breakups, 9 interceptions, and 2 pick sixes in his career in 49 games. So this is a guy that was all over the football field, making plays, getting his hands on footballs. And as you can see, when he gets his hands on the football, he's looking to take it the distance. I had him listed as my 9th rated safety in this draft. Had he been healthy, had he not torn his ACL, you're talking about a guy that would have been as high as number 7 on my list of safeties in this draft. Instead, I had him at 9. He would have been ahead of his teammate, Burgess, and he would have been ahead of Antoine Brooks of Maryland as well. But because he was injured, I elevated those guys over him. It doesn't matter. He was the 8th safety taken in this draft, so right around where I thought he would go as my 9th safety. I had a day 2 grade on him, 2nd or 3rd round. I thought was the kind of selection that you would spend and get good value on him. And here, 3rd round pick, 85th overall. Had he not been injured, you're probably talking about a 2nd round pick here. So to me, you're getting tremendous value. All you're hoping is that he heals properly and you're getting the guy that you saw on tape previous to the injury, pre-injury. So you go to his strengths. Quality NFL safety size. He added 34 pounds since arriving on the Utah campus. This is a guy that came to Utah at right around 6 feet, $170 soaking wet, and morphed his body into a safety at 6 feet, 204. So he went from a corner, and he played corner the first 3 years at Utah, to a safety, and actually made the transition seamlessly. And now he has a body type to match that of a safety. And so that's a really good job by him of adding on weight that kind of went well with his frame and didn't lose any of the athleticism that he had at the cornerback position. Speed! I talked about the speed. Don't actually have a 40 time, but I gave you a range of 4.43 to 4.49. The guy can run. You can see that on tape. Closing speed is ridiculous. Okay, there are some great examples of that on tape. Watch him against UCLA. All right, you watch him against UCLA. There's a play on a blitz where he just hawks down their quarterback. And if you know UCLA's quarterback, they got a nice little athletically gifted guy that's hard to tackle, quick, can move, elusive. And, you know, Julian Blackmon comes from about 15 yards like a screaming banshee. And before he could even react, Julian Blackmon's on him and forcing a fumble that eventually gets scooped up by a defensive lineman. And Julian Blackmon then escorts him to the end zone for about a good 85-yard scoop and score touchdown, more like a 70-yard scoop and score touchdown. But nonetheless, he closed the distance so quickly the quarterback couldn't even react. Perfectly timed blitz, right up the A-gap before he could even react. Julian Blackmon's on him and popping the football free. Then there's another play against Oregon. One of the first plays of the game, they try to throw a little bit of a screen out to the running back. They set it up perfectly. Julian Blackmon's all over it, comes from about 20 yards off the pace and just devours that running back. It's a thing of beauty, and it's what gets you excited about this guy as a safety. Ex-cornerback with the ability to seamlessly drop over the slot. Those cornerback traits carry over to him as a safety, and so he's very comfortable playing over the slot, not out of position, not like a fish out of water when you ask him to drop over the slot and cover a tight end. he's more than in his comfort zone. And so that's another byproduct of having a guy that was an ex-cornerback playing at the safety position. Reliable tackler, not afraid to mix it up. I've talked about some instances where he wasn't afraid to get in there and throw his body weight around. But also, he's just a guy that will get people on the ground. He gives up a big ball to Michael Pittman Jr. You know him all too well. He's your first draft pick in this draft. And gives up a big ball to him. Has to go chase him down and makes a shoestring tackle to get him on the ground. A couple of other plays where you're watching him in there and he's corralling guys and getting them down as seemingly the last line of defense. And so he's a guy that I would trust in those situations to get ball carriers on the ground. Underrated blitzer. I talked about him blitzing against UCLA, and I watched him in some other games blitz aggressively and have some success. So I think that's something else I'd like to see him do a little bit more of at the next level. Ball skills and production. I mean, through the roof. 9 career interceptions, 4 of them coming as a safety in his lone season as a safety. And so 20 pass breakups in his career, 9 interceptions, just getting his hands on footballs. 2 pick sixes in his career. So guy's a playmaker, has ball skills, and the production kind of bears that out. And then upside, I don't like throwing the upside thing around too often because every player should have upside at this point. Some lower than others, but you're coming from the collegiate game, there should be some upside. But in the case of a Julian Blackmon, a guy that's only played the position 1 year, there is tremendous upside. This is a guy that is extremely green and raw at the position. And so there is plenty of room for growth. As you'll find as we talk about his weaknesses, a lot of them really stem from the fact that he just doesn't have a lot of experience at the position, and he'll get better at that as time progresses. Speaking of which, you get to his weaknesses. Poor pursuit angles and wandering eyes. I think sometimes his eyes get him into trouble. And he'll get better at this. As he gets more experience, he'll understand what quarterbacks are trying to do to him. He won't fall for the eye candy as much. But right now, he's kind of in that infant stage of where everything is brand new to him. And so you send a shallow cross in front of his face and, like you would expect a youngin' to do, his eyes follow that shallow cross. And now all of a sudden that deep post is right behind him. And he was supposed to be deeper than the deepest, but he fell for the banana in the tailpipe. And that happens with young players. And that's why you want guys to grow over time. Well, he didn't have that opportunity, not at this particular position. So his angles, his pursuit angles, this is the reason I don't trust him as a single high safety. He's got enough speed to play single high safety. He should be able to play the middle of the field by himself and get from red line to red line. That's not a problem. The problem is he takes poor angles to the football. And because of that, He's not a guy you can trust to be your last line of defense as a pass defender. He just doesn't take the proper angles. He'll end up underneath the receiver, and that guy will be behind you, and you just can't have that. So he's got to take better pursuit angles, and his eye discipline has to get better. Average makeup speed. You kind of saw that against USC. For all the speed that this guy has, Michael Pittman Jr. got on top of him, and we all know he's not a blazer per se. He's a 4.5 guy. And I'm telling you that Julian Blackmon's a 4.4 guy, yet Michael Pittman got behind him and he was struggling to catch up with him. Literally had to dive at his ankles just to get him down. Pittman was almost on the verge of pulling away from him. So he doesn't have the makeup speed you would expect from a guy with his kind of skill set. He's raw. I just said that. And all of this, a lot of these ills that he has as a safety right now and the question marks, a lot of them stem from just a guy with a lack of experience. He's extremely raw. Loses his luggage in scramble situations. You're watching him he had a rough go of it against USC. He really did. Gave up some big plays. He was not disciplined in his responsibilities. There's a rollout. The quarterback should have been sacked on this particular play. They get a free hitter. They scheme up a great blitz. Guy comes free, got a clean shot at the quarterback, and just whiffs. He misses. Quarterback gets free, scrambles outside of the pocket, throws a deep ball about 40 yards down the field. And where's Julian Blackmon? He got sucked up, lost in the sauce. He's paying attention to the quarterback, loses his luggage. His guy goes running down the field, one-on-one. It should have been a double team situation. Instead, he's trailing the play by about 7 yards. It's caught in the end zone for a touchdown. So he'll lose his luggage in scramble situations. His instincts are below average right now. And again, that will improve with time. But right now, he's just not there. And in injury concerns, I told you at the top of his breakdown, he tore his ACL in the Pac-12 championship game versus Oregon. And so you're talking about late in the season. He may not be able to help you in 2020. It's not a foregone conclusion that he'll actually be able to help. He's going to start the season out on the PUP list for sure. And, by the time he's ready to go, depending on where this team is and what you have going on, you may just say, you know what, continue to rehab, get yourself ready, and you'll come out guns a-blazing next year. He'll probably be ready at some point in 2020, but he tore his ACL, so that's a long journey back. We'll see what happens. Bottom line is, this is a guy that in his lone year as a safety at Utah garnered second team All-AP, All-American, and first team All-Pac-12 consideration. So that tells you all the talent is there. Everything you need to know about what people think about Julian Blackmon, his talent, his skill set, and how they translate to the next level. My comp for him is Eric Weddle, another former Ute that played a ton of years in the NFL, illustrious career, just recently retired, but not before making a bunch of plays. I see a lot of the same qualities in Julian Blackmon, not afraid to hit and be physical, but at the same time has enough skill to drop over the slot, make plays on the football, and just be a difference maker out on the football field. So I see a lot of those same qualities here in the third round, 85th pick overall. Safety out of Utah. Julian Blackmon, is a triple. He would have been a 4 had he been healthy, but you got to see what you're going to get, and will he be the same player after the injury? As we move on to the next selection in this draft, 4th round, 122nd pick overall, quarterback out of Washington, Jacob Eason is the selection. 6'6", 231 pounds stands Jacob Eason. I had him as my 5th rated quarterback in this draft. He ended up being the 6th quarterback taken. Jalen Hurts went above him. That was the one guy that I had behind him. Not by much, but that was the guy I had behind him that went in front of him. Nonetheless, all the quarterbacks in this draft that went before Eason went in the first 2 rounds. Eason did not go until day 3. So this is an interesting pick. It fits the timeline, everything. It's a great fit for him and what you're going to ask him to do right away. And so I think because of where he was selected, it makes a ton of sense, and it increases the value of this pick. 260 completions out of 405 attempts, which nets you a 64% completion percentage for 3,132 yards, 23 scores and 8 touchdowns, 23 touchdowns and 8 INTs in 13 games for UW. You look at his career stats, and this goes back to Georgia as well. 468 completions out of 782 attempts, which nets you a 60% completion percentage for 5,590 yards, 39 scores, 16 INTs in 32 games. So you're pretty much talking about roughly 2.5 seasons worth of starts here for Jacob Eason through his career. And a lot of people thought he should have went back to school for one more year at Washington. He decided to come out. I don't know if it would have made much of a difference had he went back to school or not. Maybe it would have. Maybe it wouldn't have. Bottom line is, I had an early 2nd round grade on him. You get him in the 4th round. That's tremendous value. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on. His strengths, looks the part of a big-time NFL slinger. We know about the arm strength, which is the next pro, big-time NFL arm. He just looks the part, man, at 6'6", 230. I mean, that's how you draw it up. If you go to the chalkboard and you start sketching out a quarterback and how he's supposed to look at the NFL level, you're going to sketch out about a guy that's 6'5", 6'6", right around 230 pounds, so that they can withstand the rigors of the NFL, take some punishment, get up, and keep on ticking. And so he looks the part, got a huge cannon of an arm. He's got a rope. He's got a hose. Whatever description or adjectives you want to use to describe Jacob Eason's right arm, go right ahead. They all fit because he can throw it with the best of them. Has taken snaps under center, so he's played in a pro-style offense to a degree. You know, a lot of these guys haven't taken any snaps outside of a quarterback sneak, and a lot of these guys don't even have that in their playbooks in college, where they, you know, if it's 4th and inches, they're still taking a gun snap. This is a guy that took snaps under center, turned his back to the defense on play action fakes, took 7-step drops, 5-step drops. This is a guy that's comfortable with the footwork necessary to play in an NFL pro style offense, comfortable with meeting his landmarks from under center to hand the football off to the running back and what track to take and all of that good stuff. So this isn't a guy that's uncomfortable with taking snaps under center, playing in a pro style offense. Can throw with touch down the field. Usually guys with cannons, you worry about, do they have the ability to take some off and throw the football with touch? Guys like Cam Newton have struggled with that throughout their career. Everything's a 97, 98 mile an hour fastball. They don't know how to take some off and finesse it down the field. And so you wonder with guys like that, do they have the ability to do that? Jacob Eason does a good job of drifting to buy time. When you got a big arm, you can get away with some things that guys with lesser arms can't. One of those things is that you don't have to have a perfect throwing platform to still get the football there with enough mustard on it to allow a guy to catch it and run after the catch. With big arm quarterbacks, a lot of times their throwing platforms are usually all over the place. Because they trust their arm so much, they can throw from ridiculous platforms, fading away, drifting backwards, running sideways, throwing back across their body, that sort of thing. I still wouldn't recommend it, but they get away with a lot of things because their arm strength is able to get the football there. He is a guy that can drift. So that's one of the things they want him to stop doing, however, and they tried to lessen that in his game because that's sometimes when he gets into trouble is when he drifts. But he can also drift to buy time to allow, like, let's say a shallow cross. You got two guys crossing on a mesh route, and you want them to clear one out for one of these guys. Let's say it's man-to-man, and when they run that mesh route, these defenders run into each other, and somebody's naturally going to create a pick, and boom, one of these receivers is going to come open, but there's a little bit of pressure. You need to just backpedal a little bit to allow him to clear so you can get him to rock. He's able to do that, and I watched him do that on tape a couple of times. Big time upside. Like, the best of Jacob Eason is yet to come. You saw flashes at Georgia before he was beat out by Jake Fromm, and then he gets to UW, and he only plays in a year there, and you see flashes again, but he wasn't ever able to put it all together. But you see the ability, you see the talent, you see the reason why so many people are excited about Jacob Eason. There's big time upside here. You just got to get someone, the right coaching staff, to pull it out of him and get him to play on a consistent basis to his skill set level, because it's extremely high. You get to his weaknesses. Limited experience as a QB1. Like I said, 1 year starting as the full-time starter at Georgia. He followed that up with a season where he got injured, and then Jake Fromm takes over and doesn't relinquish the job. He then transfers to Washington, has to sit out a year at UW because of the transfer rules. Finally gets his opportunity at Washington, plays really well, but didn't knock anybody's socks off per se. Probably was better suited going back and decided to come out. And so you're talking about essentially 2 years of starting experience in his career. Just really needed more time. He needed more time to be seasoned. And so here's another weakness, and I think this is the one that pushed him down draft boards. Not a great athlete. The 5 guys that were taken in front of him in this draft, all 5 of them, and this is kind of where the league is heading. If you see the trend, you understand that the 5 guys taken ahead of him were all mobile quarterbacks that can create off schedule, move out of the pocket, use their legs if need be. And Jacob Eason just isn't that guy. And because of that, not only was he not taken in the first round or the second round, but he wasn't even taken in day 2. He was taken in day 3. Had this guy had some mobility, if they felt like he could create off schedule, Jacob Eason is no worse than a third-round quarterback, probably more of a second-round quarterback, which is where I had him anyway because of the skill set and the talent. But this is a guy that doesn't have that mobility, and teams, I think, look at the rest of the league. It's a copycat league. We all know this to be a fact. And they look at Patrick Mahomes. They look at Aaron Rodgers, two of the more prolific quarterbacks that we've seen over the last decade plus. And they look at their skill set and they see guys that are mobile and able to create off schedule and throw from random platforms and be able to make things happen when the initial play isn't there and things break down. And they just don't see that from Jacob Eason or Jake Fromm. And that's why those guys got pushed down the draft board, if you ask me. So not a great athlete. I think that really hurt Jacob Eason in this draft. If you're going to draft a quarterback like Jacob Eason, you have to have an offensive line that will allow a guy to be a statue in the pocket. Well, this is the offensive line that will allow him the time, which is ironic because for years when Andrew Luck was there, this line was anything but protective. Now you've got the kind of line after years of building it up that will protect a guy that is statuesque back there. And so this is actually a great fit for him. Struggles when the pocket breaks down around him. Damn, did I not just lead into that? I mean, that's one of the biggest knocks on him is when things start crumbling around him, when things get uncomfortable, he doesn't react well to it. That's when you get the interceptions. That's when you get the forced throws that could be intercepted. That's when you get the sacks when he should probably just escape the pocket and throw it away. That's when you get some of the unforced errors that you get from Jacob Eason. And so he doesn't handle the pressure very well. So I said all of that to say this. I couldn't think of a better spot for him. The worst thing that could have happened to Jacob Eason is he lands in a spot where they've got issues at the quarterback position, maybe a stopgap veteran there, like say where Tua landed in Miami. Ryan Fitzpatrick is there. And look, Ryan Fitzpatrick is capable of playing 16 games. But most years, teams don't want him to play all 16 because there's usually a young quarterback that they're waiting to get into the game and that's waiting in the wings, similar to what's going to happen to him in Miami. More likely than not, Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to start the year off and he's going to play solid football. And if they wanted him to, he could play all 16, but he's probably going to play 8 or 9 games. They're going to be out of the playoff race and they're going to put Tua in there and he's not going to turn back. And I would hate it for a situation where, it's a older veteran quarterback like a Case Keenum in there that can get you by for a couple of weeks, but you really don't want him starting 16 games, and you stick that guy out there and all of a sudden he gets hurt after 6 weeks or he's stinking it up and you're like, look, I could just put the young fella in there. If you're going to stink this bad, just put the young fella in there. It doesn't really matter. And all of a sudden, Jacob Eason is in the game in week 7. Remember Jacksonville once upon a time, and this is my best example for you of what I didn't want to happen to Jacob Eason and why I think this is the perfect spot for him. You remember Blake Bortles was selected by Jacksonville in the first round, and their intent was to not play him in year 1. They had come out and said, look, there may even be weeks where Blake Bortles isn't even active. That's how badly we do not want him to play in his rookie season. And they had Chad blame it on the Henny as the starting quarterback. And when you got a guy like that, and that's what I'm talking about, that's unstable at the quarterback position, that could get hurt or just play pretty poorly to the point where you're like, look, I can't take this anymore. If you're going to play this bad, I might as well let the young fella get his feet wet. And so Henny gets hurt like week 4. They had to throw Blake Bortles to the Wolves. And I never felt like he fully got to progress and got to get to where he needed to be before he got thrown out there, and it showed. And I think Jacob Eason is one of those guys that needs time. And because he's playing behind a guy that just doesn't get hurt in Phillip Rivers and doesn't miss any time, you at least got 1 year of him learning, and you're hoping to have a Patrick Mahomes type of effect here. And you got Jacoby Brissett. And let's not forget about him. If anything were to happen to Phillip Rivers, Jacoby Brissett is going in, not Jacob Eason. So you're good. You don't have to see this guy this year. And even if you said Eason's not ready and Phillip Rivers didn't play as well as you wanted him to, you could go back to Jacoby Brissett for 1 more year, and then Jacob Eason would be ready to go after that. So either way, because of the fit, and my comp for him is Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco. One of my favorite guys in the clutch is Joseph Flacco. Won an NFL Super Bowl and MVP. Had that ridiculous 2012 run in the playoffs. We all know about it. 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. Got him the big deal. Look, if Jacob Eason can become Joe Flacco, then you got yourself a hell of a quarterback. And I know some of you don't love Joe Flacco. I get it. But Joe Flacco, when he was at his best, was pretty damn good in this league. So in the 4th round, 122nd pick overall, quarterback out of Washington. Jacob Eason for me is a 4. Really like this pick, and I think this is a pick that if you're a Colts fan, you should be excited about. Now we're going to start to speed up through these picks now. We get to the 5th round, 149th pick overall. Offensive lineman out of Ball State. Danny Pinter is the selection. 6'4", 306 pounds, 32-inch arms. Ran a 4.9 140, which got me excited at the combine. That's when he first got on my radar, was the combine and how athletically gifted he looked. Now it all makes sense because I had no idea who Danny Pinter was at the time. Now it all makes sense because you're talking about an ex-tight end convert over to tackle. So now the athleticism that he showed at the combine makes all the sense in the world. 12 games in 2019, 12 starts at right tackle. For his career, 24 games started, or 24 games, 24 starts at right tackle. I'm not going to count his tight end time because that's of no concern to you as Colts fans. You care about the amount of starts he had on the offensive line. 24 games, 24 starts at right tackle. So I had a 5th round grade on him, which is where you took him. So that's good value there. But strengths morphed into tight end frame morphed tight end frame into a tackle frame and still growing. When you look at him, he's going to have to get stronger. That's something we'll talk about here shortly. But to grow all the way from a 250, 60-pound tight end to where he is now speaks volumes. When you see pictures of Danny Pinter in high school and what he was coming into Ball State, and to see him now, it's amazing the transformation his body has undergone. Ex-tight end athleticism, and it shows once he gets to the second level. You don't always see it at the line of scrimmage, but once he's able to get to the second level, you see that athleticism and in all of its full glory on display. He can move, man. He can definitely move. He sustains really well. What I've seemed to find is that guys that are, converts from other positions, that convert over from tackle or from the defensive side of football or from tight end or something like that, and you see these guys convert over, they seem to sustain a lot better than guys that have been playing the position for a long time. And that's just odd to me, but I guess it's because they're so green and they're everything's new to them. They take to coaching a lot better. When you've been playing offensive line since high school and you have some bad habits, sometimes it's harder to undo some of those bad habits. But when you haven't been taught these things and they teach you how to do it and they teach you the right way and you learn that from the jump, I guess it's something that just becomes embedded and ingrained in you. But he sustains really well for a guy that hasn't been playing the tackle position but for 2 years. Good posture in pass pro, man. He's got a nice erect stance, pause, up straight, ready to go. A good base, shoulder, your legs, feet shoulder width apart, hands in ready position to go. They're right here, like everything looks smooth on Danny Pinter from that perspective. Reacts well to TE games, like those tackle end stunts and twists that they're running those games. He's not going for it, man. I was impressed. He was all over that, man. He didn't stay on that block inside too long. Peeled off, came back, picked up that looping defensive end or a looping defensive tackle. Guy blitzing off the edge. He'd come down from pinching and boom, kick out, get a piece of that guy. Really reacts well to color, but more in particular, reacts well to the TE games that they try to run up front. Again, really rare that a guy with limited experience does such a good job in those types of situations. And then upside, again, I don't like throwing upside out there, but when you've got this little experience at the position and you're continuing to grow and you're seeing the maturation, you're seeing some of the improvements from year 1 to year 2, and then even in season, you're seeing him get better at certain things in the season, that they're just give him 2 more years at the position and see the kind of growth that he's going to have. So tremendous upside for Danny Pinter in that regard. Weaknesses. Don't like his lateral agility or don't love it. His feet look heavy and is sluggish in his kick slide. For a guy with his athleticism and his athletic tight end profile background, I thought he would be a little bit more agile with his ability to move laterally and just isn't there. Guys were running by him and then he'd be holding on for dear life, or he'd barely push them around the pocket, give the quarterback a chance to step up. He has to get stronger. Moved way too easily on bull rushes. Guys are just taking him and literally depositing him into the lap of the quarterback. He's got to get functionally stronger. That's not a situation where that's something he can get by or, bypass and, kick him inside the guard. He'll be fine. No, he's got to get stronger. Right now, he can't help you in any capacity other than in a backup role right now, which is what he's going to be asked to do right now anyway. But, in the event that you need him to start for you, he's going to have to get stronger. And I think that's the beauty of not needing him to play right away, is that you bring him in, you get him in your strength and conditioning program. He puts on an additional 5 to 7 pounds of muscle and gets stronger to be able to withstand some of these bull rushes. Lots of holding on for dear life or barely pushing defenders around the pocket. I kind of spoke to why that happens. His lateral agility isn't what you would like it to be. And so a lot of guys are able to use quickness on a first or second step to get around him. And all of a sudden now he's hanging on by a thread for dear life. And or he's barely pushing that guy around the pocket. He'll get better. I think he'll get better with more time. He'll figure out ways to combat the fact that just isn't his strong suit. And, going inside the guard where there's a lot less real estate that he's got to defend, I think that'll make it a lot better for him as well. And then he's raw. I talked about the upside. When there's upside, there's also the fact that you're raw. You look at it from whatever end of the spectrum you like, whatever side of the coin makes you most comfortable. Glass half full, then he's an upside guy. Glass half empty, then he's a raw guy. So whatever the case may be, he's raw. There's no doubt about it. He needs more time. This guy's added 50 pounds since 2017. So in 2 years, this guy's added 50 pounds to his frame and still needs to add more, which is crazy if you look at it from that perspective. And like I said, came to Ball State as a tight end, played the tight end position the first 2 years before converting over to right tackle, where he spent the final 2 years of his Ball State career playing the position that ultimately would get him drafted. Solid selection in the 5th round, 149th pick overall. Offensive lineman out of Ball State, Danny Pinter, for me, is a 3. I think he's a solid football player, a guy that right now is no more than a backup, but if he continues to grow and blossom at the position, could easily be a starter for you down the road. As we move on to the 6th round, Colts had a bevy of 6th round selections. A bunch of these things tallied up for them. This first one, and I believe it's the first of about 4 of these 6th rounders, 193rd pick overall. Defensive lineman out of Penn State, Robert Windsor, is the selection. 6'4", 290 pounds, 33-inch arms, 4'9" flat 40, which got some eyebrows raised because that's a pretty good time for a 290-pound interior defensive lineman. So I think that got some people buzzing a bit about Robert Windsor. You look at his 2019 season, 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, no forced fumbles in 13 games, and no pass breakups either, which is a bugaboo of mine. Career stats, 20 tackles for loss, 14 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, no pass breakups in 52 games. So I had a late day 3 pick grade on him, 6th or 7th round. Either one of those would have been fine by me. You take him in the 6th. Don't have any problems with that. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on. His strengths, high level motor and intensity. One of those guys that just plays with an edge and plays like it's his last snap on every snap. Love that about him. And when you're Robert Windsor and you're coming into the league and you're undersized and everyone's doubting you, you're going to play with a chip on your shoulder, and you've got to play with a high level of intensity and a motor that doesn't quit. Does a solid job with a swim and rip to gain control of the rep and a solid closing burst and to finish. So what he does really well is he uses an arm over move, or I like to call it a swim move, where he gets into the backfield. His is more of an arm over. It's not like a swim. It's more of I'm just going to stick my arm over here and then I'm going to rip to finish that up to get by you. And then after he does that, once he gets free, he closes that distance between he and the quarterback very quickly, or he and the running back very quickly. So That 4.9, you see it when he finally gets a chance to open up. There's a little something there in terms of juice and closing ability. Quality job of stacking and shedding to get the ball carriers. Man, I was really impressed. Watching him against Ohio State, and somehow, some way, he just keeps ending up on top of J.K. Dobbins. I'm like, whoa. Like, he'd get pushed over a gap or so, and you're thinking, okay, he's out of the play, and next thing you know, he's shedding that blocker, or he's shedding these two guys, and he's finding a way to the ball carrier, and he just finds his way to the action by hook or by crook. And so does a really good job of disengaging, stacking, and then shedding, and then getting to the ball carrier. I feel like he got drafted based off of the Iowa game. Like, if you're looking for the best of Robert Windsor, go to the Iowa game. He had another strong performance versus Purdue, but the Iowa game is what did it for me. When you watch him against Iowa, you said, look, if you can be that guy at the next level, we got something here. That's the game that, to me, put him on the map. Now, 2018 was a big season for him, but 2019 was somewhat disappointing. We'll talk about that here shortly, but 2019 Iowa game is the one that kind of said, all right, it's in there. You can do this. Just need to see it on a more consistent basis. Some hand usage. He can use his hands a little bit. Again, that Iowa game, the Purdue game, and against Ohio State a little bit. You see him use his hands, and you're like, okay, Robert, you got a little something there. Now, it's not consistent. It's not as consistent, and his hands aren't as heavy and aggressive as you would like them to be, but he uses them enough to the point where you say to yourself, hey, there's something here if he learns how to master hand usage and how that can help him moving forward. You look at his weaknesses. Lackluster follow-up from a tantalizing 2018. What do I mean by a tantalizing 2018? Well, I told you he had 5 tackles for loss in 2019. He had 10 in 2018. I told you he had 3.5 sacks in 2019. Well, he had 7.5 in 2018. I told you he had no forced fumbles in 2019. He had 2 forced fumbles in 2018. So he was putting in work, and everyone got excited about Robert Windsor going into 2019. And then he kind of just, bottom fell out a little bit. And, a lot of people soured on him. And so everyone wants to know, what the hell happened in 2019? Where was the 2018 Robert Windsor at? So that's something that, if you're glass half full, hey, man, if we can get 2018 out of you again, we got ourselves a steal. And then, glass half empty, hey, man, what the hell is the 2018 Robert Windsor at? What the hell happened to him in 2019? I don't want him. So, you can look at it both ways. Lacks the girth and sheer physical makeup to withstand double teams and down blocks. He was getting uprooted and then moved multiple gaps. When, Ohio State runs a down block and they combo him off and the guard has him and the tackle comes and washes him down, man, he was moving. They were moving his ass like he was a travel carry-on case. I mean, boy, was he moving. When they double teamed him and that guard and that center double teamed him and we're looking to, centers looking to get up to the second level. Oh, they made it easy. He wasn't staying there. He couldn't hold his ground versus the double team. And that's where that undersized frame kind of comes into play. No real standout traits for Robert Windsor. This is a guy that when you look at him, he's not overly quick, even though there's a flash of quickness every now and again, but not overly quick. Doesn't have elite pass rushing ability. That's not his calling card. He's not big. He's not 320 pounds. So not holding the point of attack. He's not an elite run defender. There's not one thing he does exceptionally well that you look at and say, hey, this is what you're going to hang your hat on at the next level. He's just solid, but he's undersized. So he's going to have to play hard. He's going to have to do the little things. He's going to have to get stronger. He's going to have to get bigger. He's going to have to take advantage of every single opportunity he gets because he is an undersized defensive tackle at this very moment. And so in the 6th round, 193rd pick overall, you guys kind of already saw my score for him earlier. Robert Windsor for me is a triple. This is a solid pickup. My comp for him is Jamie Meter, the ex-Cleveland Brown, now Detroit Lion interior defensive lineman, a guy that, not a lot of sacks to his career, to his name in his career, but, is a guy that plays hard and has found a way to stay in the league a lot longer than a lot of people thought he would at this point. as we get to the next selection in this draft for the Indianapolis Colts. 6th round, as I mentioned, all the rest of these are 6th rounders. As a matter of fact, these final 3 picks are all consecutively 211th, 212th, and 213th to wrap up this draft. We first start, though, at 211, defensive back out of UMass, Isaiah Rodgers is the selection. 5'10", 170 pounds. Really small guy, but ran a 4.28. All right. If you want us to forget about how small you are, run really, really fast in a straight line, and Isaiah Rodgers can do that. 3 tackles for loss, no sacks, 1 forced fumble, 10 pass breakups, 4 INTs, 1 block kick, and a pick 6 in 12 games to go along with 11 returns, punt returns that is, for 120 yards and 1 touchdown, and 53 kickoffs, the most in college football in 2019, for 1,295 yards and no scores. So he was very, very active in the returns game, both special and kickoff returns. Punt or kickoff returns, I should say. For his career, 10 tackles for loss, no sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 35 pass breakups, 11 INTs, 3 block kicks, 3 pick sixes in 45 games to go along with 21 punt returns for 156 yards in that 1 score that he had in 2019, and 99 kickoff returns for 2,338 yards and no scores. Had a 7th round grade on Isaiah Rodgers. Give you my comp for him a little bit later on. First strength, though, elite speed and ball skills and production. 4.28 speed is elite. No need to explain that to you. The ball skills, 11 interceptions is crazy. That's a big number there. 35 pass breakups, insane amount of balls he's getting his hands on, paws. And the production, again, speaks for itself. Stays in phase downfield with receivers while displaying LLC properties. This is a guy that routinely is in the hip pocket of a wide receiver. He's staying in phase, and he's looking back for the football. You know how I am about my corners and having LLC properties. Look, locate, contest. If you don't look back to find the football, then you can't locate the football. If you don't locate the football, then you cannot contest and try to make a play. When you got 11 interceptions, you're looking back for the football, and you're making plays on the football, and you're contesting. So this is a guy definitely that is able to stay in phase with that 4.28 and his LLC properties. It makes for a guy that can make plays on the football. Nosy playmaker looking to make something happen. He's got 4 forced fumbles. He's got 11 interceptions. He's all over the football field. He got 3 block kicks. We'll talk about that here in a second. Speaking of which, extreme special teams value. This is a guy that offers you value, as I mentioned already, as a kick and punt returner. He's a tremendous gunner, which I think the Colts looked at and said that's the first way he can get on this team and contribute is as a gunner. And then, hey, we could also use this guy in the returns game as he's dynamic there. But don't dismiss the fact that this guy blocked a kick 3 out of his 4 seasons at UMass. This guy does it all on special teams, and so extreme special teams value for Isaiah Rodgers. And then finally, he's got NFL bloodlines. His cousin is his mentor. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie is his cousin, and that's the guy he's looked up to. That's the guy that showed him how to do this at a high level, the guy that was sitting right next to him as he got the call from the Indianapolis Colts. So he's got NFL bloodlines, got that coursing through his veins, and what better guy to learn from than a guy that played over a decade in the league and at times played at an extremely high level in Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. So you look at his weaknesses, very thin build. This is a guy that, look, 170 pounds, man. What more can I say? What more do I need to say? I mean, he's a really small guy, and when you look at his frame, it doesn't look like a frame that's going to put on an additional 15, 20 pounds as the Colts get him in their strength and conditioning program. He looks like one of those guys that showed up on campus at a $168 and left at a $172. Like, he's not getting much bigger, is Isaiah Rodgers. Will get big-bodied and have guys go up over him for the football. Watch it on tape. I watched him versus Charlotte. and he's right there in phase. He's in perfect position, and the receiver just went up over him and took the football from him, and there was not much he could do. He wasn't in a good leaping position, and the guy was like 6'2", and he just jumped, and what was Isaiah Rodgers going to do? He's 5'10". All right, I watched the same thing happen to him against Rutgers. Now, he had 2 picks in that game versus Rutgers, but guess what? He also got beat deep for a touchdown against Rutgers, and, same premise, right there, in phase, looks back for the football in perfect position, and a 6'3" receiver just goes up and puts his nutsack on Isaiah Rodgers' helmet, and not really much you can do when a guy's got you by 5-6 inches and can jump. I mean, what do you want him to do? So that's not something he really can control. Can he hold up against the rigors of the NFL with his size? Tackling-wise, at $170, man, it's not out of the realm of possibility for a guy his size to come up, try to lay the wood on somebody, and boom, he dislocates his shoulder. He's a small guy, I don't know if he can hold up or not. I'd like to think he can, but a $170, there's a reason there aren't many, $170 guys in the league. So can he kick inside to a nickel corner? That's usually the standard prerequisite answer for anybody that's south of about $180, south of $185. Hey, is he 6 feet? No. Is he 185 pounds? No. All right, kick him inside. That's usually the easy answer, is to just slide him inside the nickel and see if he can play in there. I don't know if he can or not. I didn't see it on tape. I saw a guy that was outside, pretty much on a consistent basis. So not sure if he can kick inside or not. Very greedy to a fault. This is a guy that is extremely greedy. When you watch him versus Rutgers, he gets beat down the field. He's in cover 3. He's supposed to be deeper than the deepest, wider than the widest. And his eyes are just, he sees a guy running a seam route inside. And instead of him carrying the guy on the outside up the field, he's being nosy. He wants to pick. He sees it. He thinks it's coming to the slot on the seam ball. And so he goes to jump that. And this guy is running all the way down the field unmolested. And then by the time he realizes what he's done, it's too late. That guy's going for a touchdown, 70 yards, score. So he can be nosy. It can be a gift, and it can be a curse. But there's a lot to like here for a guy you get later in the draft here in Isaiah Rodgers, man. 6th round, 211th overall selection. Defensive back out of UMass. Isaiah Rodgers, for me, is a triple as we continue on in this draft. 6th round, 212th pick overall, wide receiver out of Washington State. Desmond Patmon is the pick. 6'4", 225, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.48 40. 58 catches for 762 yards in 8 scores in 13 games in 2019. For his career, 156 grabs, 1,976 yards, 13 scores in 43 games. Had a 7th round pick grade on Desmond Patmon. I'll give you my comp for him. Oh, and my comp for Isaiah Rodgers, pardon me on that, sorry, is Adam Pac-Man Jones. At his best, he'll be a dynamic return man like Pac-Man was, a guy that can make plays in the passing game like Pac-Man could. But, at 170, I think there's a ceiling on how good he can be unless he can put on weight and still keep his athleticism. But he's got the same kind of dynamic ability as Adam Pac-Man Jones coming out of West Virginia. Height, weight, speed specimen is Desmond Patmon. 6'4", 225, 4.48. I don't have to say much more. And I remember earlier at the top of this show, I said, I love the fact that the Colts doubled down on a big, hulking type of wide receiver, a guy that can run, but still big. That this is the second of those two guys. Obviously, the first being Michael Pittman Jr. Love the fact that you went after 2 of them. One of these guys has to pan out. You're hoping maybe both of these guys pans out for you. There's space at the receiver position, that's for sure. Has the size to impose his will over smaller DBs. I just talked about Isaiah Rodgers being in the perfect position, but really not being able to do much with guys that were just simply bigger than him that could go up and get the football. Here's a prime example of a guy that would be able to do that to him in Desmond Patmon at 6'4", 225. Watched him do that on tape from time to time. He doesn't do it enough, but you see it in his game that he has the ability to go up, high point the football, and use his size to his advantage over smaller defensive backs. He's a BSB. a back shoulder bully. That to me is the best route that he runs right now, is him simply running 10, 12 yards, stopping, pivoting to the outside, quarterback putting it on his outside shoulder, and him going and getting the football. Will work for food. Watched him block in the run game very effectively. At 6'4", 225, I would hope that you would give effort as a blocker. I don't think I mentioned this with Michael Pittman, but he blocks as well. Tremendous catch radius, as I mentioned, with Pittman, 6'4", 225, long arms, can go get the football. So I told you 33-inch arms. That's a tremendous catch radius here in Desmond Patmon. Can climb the ladder for the football. Kind of spoke to that earlier with him being able to impose his size over smaller DBs. Solid release off the line of scrimmage. He's got a little bit of smoothness into him with how he runs routes, how he gets off the line of scrimmage. He's a big guy, so you're going to have defensive backs challenge him at the line of scrimmage. But I thought he handled himself well enough coming off the ball. His weaknesses: lapses in concentration. You got drops. You got fumble. There was a historic game one of the craziest games I've ever watched in my life was the UCLA and Washington State game from this past season. UCLA was down like 40. I want to say they were down 42-17 in that game in the fourth quarter. And they ended up coming back and winning that game like 60. It was like late stages of the third. They're down. When I say late stage, I'm talking like 1 or 2 minutes left in the third quarter, maybe even early fourth. They were down 42-17. They end up winning that game 67-63. One of the craziest football games I've ever seen in my life. And, in order to come back from that much down and then not only come back and win, but it's not like they came back and won the game, 45-42 or 44 on a late field goal. You had, UCLA score an additional 21 points after that, or UCLA score. Yeah, I said that right. UCLA was down big. You had Washington State score an additional 21 points and losing 67-63. So a lot of possessions, a lot of nonsense went down. But in order for them to come back in such short fashion, you had to have mistakes by UCLA really expedite the comeback. And there were a couple in that game by Desmond Patmon himself. He had a drop, easy, 12-10, comeback, 14 back to 12 or 12 back to 10. He's wide ass open. It's a stop route essentially. And the corner's playing way off and he stops and he's wide open. The ball comes to him, easy throw right in his face. And it goes right through his hands. And it's like he just tossed it to the defender. It was the craziest thing. Defender's running to try to get back into the play. And Desmond says, "Here you go." And he's like, "Oh, thanks." And catches. I'm like, "Whoa, really? Did you just drop that?" Then he makes a catch on a drag route. And then he got this tremendous run after the catch. He makes a guy miss. He's dragging another guy. And the guy that he made miss, it's almost like he thought that guy was now all of a sudden in quicksand or he's invisible now. I made a miss. He can't come back and play, And so he makes that guy miss. And now he's got the ball all out here willy-nilly. And the guy that he made miss comes from behind, pokes the football free, and he fumbles and UCLA recovers the football. Just lapses in concentration. Too many drops on tape and too many mistakes like that. He's got to be better. Does it create separation on underneath routes, and catching traffic isn't at a high enough level for me. When you're a big framed receiver and I'm not sure you're going to be able to really separate underneath, you're going to have to catch it in traffic at a high level. And Desmond Patmon just doesn't do that well enough for me. That's a problem. Build-up speed runner who lacks wiggle and ability to win right away. He's a 4.48 guy, but you don't see that 4.48 until he's well down the field and he's had a chance to take 6 or 7 steps to really build up that speed and get to his fifth gear. You don't see it underneath in the form of quickness or, even on a drag route, he's not running as fast until he gets to the end of that drag route. So he's a build-up speed guy. Slow to find spots in zone coverage and then drifts to make it worse. So I had an issue with him down in the red zone. A couple of games I'm watching him in against Oregon, specifically against Oregon, but even against UCLA, he's running little hook routes over the football, easy target when you're a big, 6'4" target. It's easy for the quarterback to see you right in his line of vision, right over the ball. And so that's what you do. You take your big receiver, you have him sit down in zone right over the middle of the field, make himself an inviting target. And it's like he struggles to find that happy medium between, all right, linebacker here, corner kind of drifting out here. Let me sit down right in between them, split the difference, make myself an open target. It's like on the game, how the computer on Madden, they run to a specific spot every time because that's where they're supposed to go. And, you got to have a feel. You're supposed to go here, but the linebacker's there. So I'm not going to run right to where the linebacker is. I'm going to run to where he isn't and sit down. And he didn't do that. He runs to where the linebacker is because that's where he's supposed to go. Like, no, dude, have some common sense. So, I just felt like he didn't maximize some of his ability down in the red zone in zone coverage because he wasn't sitting down in the soft spots of the zone consistently and making himself an easy target for the quarterback. And then a couple of times where the quarterback did decide, I'm going to force it to you, he drifts into the end zone. So you're sitting down in zone and then you start fading away. Don't do that, especially at the goal line. You're allowing guys to come up and try to make a play. Makes me a little uncomfortable. There's a lot of things I like, a lot of things I don't like with Desmond Patmon, but the one thing you don't have to worry about is his size. The guy's big, and if nothing else, he's going to give you some extra size at the receiver position in the 6th round, 212th pick overall. Wide receiver Desmond Patmon for me is a 3, and I just told you who my comp for him is. It's Marco Mitchell, the former Nevada product that was drafted by the Washington Redskins once upon a time. Big guy, could run, made a bunch of plays that preseason, but never amounted to much in the nation's capital. As we wrap up this draft in the 6th round, I told you 3 straight 6th round picks for the Colts. The final pick in the 6th round for the Colts, Jordan, linebacker out of Michigan, Jordan Glasgow is the pick, 6'1", 226 pounds. 7 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 1 pass breakup, 1 blocked kick in 13 games in 2019. For his career, 10 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass breakups, and that 1 blocked kick from 2019 in 52 games. Look, I'm going to just be quick with this guy because he is, for all intents and purposes, a special teams ace. You drafted him to come in and contribute on special teams. Special teams matters. All right, let's face it. Special teams is a huge part. It's a third of how you win games in this league. Do not discount the importance of special teams. That being said, he did get to start his final 12 games of his Michigan career as a Viper for the Wolverines, and he was solid in that role. But he's lacking in athleticism. He's lacking in size, and he doesn't have any discernible traits. He's a solid guy when he blitzes. He's okay when he's, I can't say he does stack and shed well, better than what you would expect from a guy his size. But again, he's not a tremendous athlete. He's not big, but he's heard this his entire life. He was a walk-on at Michigan. So were his 2 brothers. He's got NFL bloodlines. He's got his 2 older brothers who both walked on at Michigan just like he had to, who were guys that were overlooked that ended up making it to the NFL just like he ended up making it to the NFL. He's not out of his comfort zone here. He's been hearing you're not fast enough, you're not big enough. He knows all of these things. He understands that. He plays with a chip on his shoulder, and he knows his role and he plays it well. And so he doesn't try to be anything that he's not. You're getting a guy that walked on to Michigan and for all intents and purposes was their special teams ace for his first 3 years of his collegiate career. Then he finally got an opportunity to play the Viper role, played it well, and took full advantage of it. Got 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. And like I said, just a dynamo on special teams. If nothing else, you're getting a guy that's going to come in and help you right away on specials. And in a pinch, if you need a guy on defense at linebacker, he can help you there as well. He can do a little something, but I would not recommend that moving forward. But it's a solid selection, man. I don't have any issues with this because this guy serves a purpose at the NFL level. In the 6th round, 213th pick overall, linebacker out of Michigan, Jordan Glasgow, for me, is a double or a 2 to wrap up this Colts draft. It was a very impressive draft by the Indianapolis Colts, especially the first 4 selections or so. A couple of intriguing guys at the back end, and Patmon and Rodgers, those are guys that you get excited about. So interested to see how all of this kind of comes together, but loving the first 4 picks, man, especially if you can get Julian Blackmon back healthy at the safety position. What a steal he may ultimately be for you in the 3rd round. And then you look at Jacob Eason in the 4th round and you say, man, we might have our quarterback of the future there. So it was another fine draft turned in by the Colts organization and Chris Ballard. And what it amounts to overall is a 3.44. If you want the full breakdown of the grading scale, down in the description of this video, you will see it. Colts had 9 selections. You divide by the number of the score, and it gets you a 3.44. So down in the description, you'll see that full breakdown for you. But what that 3.44 ultimately means is it's a B draft for the Indianapolis Colts. It's a tremendous haul, good value throughout. Having no 1st round pick really didn't make much of a difference. And if you want to really go glass half full, your 1st round pick was DeForest Buckner. I mean, you feel really good about that. You're getting an all-pro caliber defensive lineman on the interior to go with Justin Houston. And I would say that that's the one thing that I would have done in this draft that the Colts didn't do, was get an edge rusher. I understand that you took Ben Banagoo last year in the draft, and a few years ago now probably, you took Kamoko Toure, and yeah, you got a massive year last year from Justin Houston. But I mean, how many more? I mean, that was his first double-digit sack season since 2014. I mean, how many more of those do you think he's got left in him? So I would have loved it if you would have taken an edge rusher in this draft, but you didn't, and that's fine. We'll see what happens at that position, but you got you a menacing defensive tackle now, so we'll see how that goes. But this was another solid draft turned in by Chris Ballard and company. And so make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. If you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitter. At Louie T Network is the Twitter handle, and on IG, Louie T Network _ is the handle there. So without any further ado, I'm going to glide to the side. I thank you guys for joining me. If it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, you guys stay safe. This has been the Indianapolis Colts and their 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up. You guys have a good one. Take care.
Louie T Network.